Welcome back to the channel. In an effort to not just be a Ghost Recon channel, we will be covering a wide variety of games in the future on the channel. Just a heads up for those of you who are already subscribers to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into the game. So you're just starting Dragon's Dogma, a hidden gem if ever there was one, but you have some questions. This is a beginner's guide that will hopefully answer a lot of them, and if you have questions about a game system or mechanic not covered, just shoot us a message down in the comments. Dragon's Dogma has an impressive character creation that will allow you to make anyone from a 9-year-old girl, no muscle, 4 foot even, no hair, green hair, to an old man who's 7 feet tall, 250 pounds, has wrinkles. Let's talk about what aspects of character creation affect gameplay. Tall and heavy character will carry more, while a smaller character can jump on and stay on larger enemies a little bit better. The added height will come into play when trying to jump onto hard to reach areas in the game, and those smaller characters will be able to get into little hidden areas specifically designed for those smaller characters, like the area in Devil's Grove for instance. My suggestion is to maximize the height of your pawn and your main character to increase its carry weight and to reach those high to reach places, as that's going to be more common. The areas that can only be reached with small characters will not yield anything that you would miss. Everything else about character customization is personal preference. Keep in mind that people are more likely to hire a female pawn, and we'll discuss why you want that to happen later in the video. Picking your class in Dragon's Dogma certainly is a decision to be made, and it does have some ripple effects later on down the line, but what's important to remember is to just enjoy and experience the classes as they come. As the game starts with just 3 basic classes, keep in mind that you will have more available to you and your pawn later in the game. But for now, you will have the Strider, the Warrior, and the Mage. Team balancing is oftentimes very important in the early game, so if you choose Strider or Warrior, then I would suggest making your pawn a Mage, or vice versa. Classes can be leveled up and abilities unlocked and upgraded using discipline points. Different from experience points, DP can be quickly leveled as it is based on the number of enemies killed. So goblin farming or bandit farming is viable in order to do this. Now there is a trick in the late game for quickly leveling vocations, but in an effort to not show any spoilers, I just ask that information stay in the comment section, and if anyone wants to spill the beans on that, they're free to do so. Now, when unlocking skills and augments, which are augments or buffs your character earns playing as vocations that can be applied during play. Keep in mind that some skills will transfer to other vocations that can be used for the same vocation of the same color type. For instance, Strider, Ranger, Assassin, and Magic Archer will all have skills that they can transfer because they all share a yellow color of vocation. Same thing for red, same thing for blue. The augments are forever yours to be applied to your Arisen. For example, I played as a warrior to get the strength augments, but play as a Strider. They are buffs you keep after you earn them, regardless of the vocational change later on in the game. Your pawn will not have access to the Magic Archer, the Mystic Knight, or the Assassin. The split skill vocations are only for Arisen. I can speculate it was so you wouldn't break the game with these overpowered classes, but what do I know? A pawn ranger with 100 plus blast arrows is pretty OP. Also, you can unlock these vocations in Grand Sorin after speaking with the Innkeeper, changing vocations anytime you want to here. Keep in mind that some enemies in the game only take magical damage, so having a magical damage pawn with you or a split magic or physical damage vocation like Magic Archer or Mystic Knight might be ideal. Each vocation, as they level up, will also level up with the same boost based on what you are. Now what I mean by that is if I want to max level my Arisen for damage per level, so as I level up I will increase the stat for strength, I'm going to want to run Assassin. For the pawn, it'll be Warrior. So each vocation has benefits as you level up. So definitely look that up when you get a chance, but I still advise new players to just enjoy whatever vocation they want to from the get out, and then you can go back later and do those specific builds. So quest giving NPCs will have colored bubbles above their head. Your quest log can be managed here, and typically you can hit the map to show where you need to go. For quest boards or notice boards, keep in mind they are constantly updating as you complete them. So as you progress in the story, continue to backtrack to those old cities to continue to check on the quest givers popping up and also the notice boards updating. Notice boards are also a great place to get some good weapons and equipment in the early game. So if you're looking to make quicker money in Dragon's Dogma, gold in the game is a very easy thing to keep up with. Firstly, no shop in the game will give you anything better than what can be found out in the wild. This goes double for stamina and health items from herbs to mushrooms. For the first part of the game, just put on whatever helps you statistically as the best gear and avoid improving that low level gear, as it's going to waste your gold. Sell off the gear that you don't need and understand that better gear is yet to come. For the most gold in the least amount of time, turning on hard mode is going to be the easiest way, as it increases your gold drops. The pawn is not only a helper to the Arisen, but also a direct reflection of you. So all your best gear and equipment should go towards your pawn in an effort to get your pawn rented. You want your pawn to be rented so that you can get Rift Crystal and items from other players in the game. Also, they're going to be looking at your gear and your bestiary knowledge, which is your character's ability to handle and deal with enemies that it's met before and defeated. So they will definitely be looking at that rating. When it comes to ratings, understand that if you get your pawn back at a base 3-star for all of its features, understand that it probably died by a fall or it fell into the water and was eaten by the brine. It wasn't intended. Another feature of the pawn system is its inclination. That determines how your pawn acts in and out of battle. So make sure you adjust that at one of these rest stations shown here. And with Rift Crystals from a salesman in the fortification. If you do this, I recommend buying at least 10 to keep your chosen inclination set for a longer period of time. Also, avoid giving the pawns commands like go or come, as this will also affect the inclination if heavily used. Pawns will earn Rift Crystals and a percentage value based on the experience points earned while out with other players. For example, if I defeat a high level enemy, that pawn will get that experience converted into Rift Crystals, so that when I send it back to you, you'll get those Rift Crystals. A workaround, if you need Rift Crystals, is to gather Rift Crystals from Bitter Black Isle or just complete missions throughout the game. Rift Crystals will become very important in the later game, not really for beginners right now, as you move into Bitter Black and attempt to get some very high tier gear later on. Unlike Skyrim, the enemies in Dragon's Dogma do not scale with you, so keeping along the main story path lines will benefit you in the beginning. If you're wandering into areas to the west, into West Grancis, and you start encountering harder enemies, a perfect example of this would be the dragon in Devil's Grove. There's a reason that you shouldn't be messing with it in the beginning, so if you hit a roadblock, just leave it and come back to it later in the game. While the crafting system may seem intimidating at the beginning, it can mostly be ignored. The only thing that you really need to do here is to make skeleton keys, and that's made possible just by some simple orb drops and to marry that up with a shackle. And shackles are typically dropped by bandits, so you shouldn't have any shortage of skeleton keys. A pickaxe can be found easily in the early game in order to mine for materials used in crafting and improving gear and weapons. You can also just smack it with a warrior sword to get the ore off, or have enemies like trolls or late game living armors smack it for you in order to gain that material without a pickaxe. Understand that most high-tier stuff does not take mining products, but instead requires high-level enemy drops from dragons, chimera, and griffin. So if you want to avoid the mining in the game, you're free to do so. Fast traveling and escort missions. While at first it seems like there is no fast travel apart from using the Eternal Fairy Stone to go from Cassidus to Grand Soren, you will find these large purple crystals called port crystals to place at will and to make a custom fast travel system. I would suggest that as you acquire them, you place those port crystals at escort mission locations. It just so happens that those locations will be exactly where you need to go throughout the game. I would also recommend dropping one right outside the exit from the Witchwood to avoid that long walk through the woods. Well, that's it. You now understand most of how the in-game features work. There are still some tips and tricks to cover in the future, so I do hope you stick around for that video in the future, as well as possible class guides that we'll hopefully be doing. If there's anything you think I missed, place your tips for novice players down in the comments. That's going to be it for Jake and Wes. Treat 'em rough, and we'll see you next time.